If you're looking for a way to generate leads, enrich leads, and conduct cold outreach campaigns, then this is the n8n workflow for you. What this workflow does is it does LinkedIn scraping via Apollo on our leads. We do some research on their company via Tavily, and then we generate customized cold outreach messaging by combining that information alongside our personal call to action. We then use Instantly AI to conduct a full-blown cold outreach campaign with all the information we've gathered here. Now, what you see here is all that data we collect, and I have it sitting inside of Google Sheets, but you could put this in an Airtable as well. I changed some of the names and emails for their privacy, but you're getting their names, their personal email, their work email, their LinkedIn URL, their work URL. Then we're summarizing it all with AI. And then when it comes to their company, we're doing background, key offerings, any recent news. And we're even looking at stuff like customer sentiment, right? Like what are people saying about these companies on places like Reddit? Then lastly, we have that outreach messaging that I talked about before. And then like I alluded to before, the actual email campaign will be conducted inside of Instantly.ai, right? It now has the emails, it has the names, and it has the custom messaging that we want. And this is the place that becomes your command center for actually executing these email campaigns. Now, if you watch my previous videos, you've seen this LinkedIn scraper and cold outreach machine. Now, while this was effective and it worked, there were some limitations, which is why I created this. And you see them right away, right? The first thing is the simplicity. This thing was kind of an unwieldy beast, right? And just looking at, we had what, 5 code nodes, something like 9 Google Sheets nodes. And while we were essentially doing the same thing, right, which is like get linked information and do company research, this one was also missing some sort of cold outreach mechanism to actually conduct a large scale campaign. It was kind of up to you to take all the information that eventually show up in the Google Sheets and do something like, Instantly AI on your own, or something like Resend, or any of the number of cold outreach programs out there. And what this one does instead is it kind of consolidates all that, right? It's much leaner. We lean a lot more on Apollo versus using something like Google search engine to get our URLs. And then we also have the built-in Instantly AI functionality, which we see right down here at the bottom, which is sending all that information to Instantly for us to then conduct the campaigns. So we're going to start big picture top to bottom so you get a good idea of how this works. And then we'll actually go into it module by module so you understand what you need to edit. So it starts with a form submission. Now, the form submission, this is just us describing what sort of leads do we want. We do stuff like the titles, the location, how many people in the company, and it then goes to an Apollo URL generator. Now, we talked about LinkedIn scraping, we talked about Apollo, we talked about Apify. How do all these things actually connect? Because it can be kind of confusing. So starting from the top, Apollo. Apollo is this program that you pay $60 a month for, or more if you want more stuff, to get information about leads, right? The same thing that we're generating in our workflow is stuff that Apollo generates, right? Names, LinkedIn URLs, emails, phone numbers, all that stuff can be found in Apollo. The thing with Apollo, like I mentioned before, it costs $60 a month, and I probably don't want to pay $60 a month for Apollo. So we instead use Apify to gain the information. Now, where does LinkedIn play in all this? Well, Apollo and Apify, they're getting their information from LinkedIn. They're scraping LinkedIn themselves. So you have these guys that are scraping information from LinkedIn. It's on their platform, and we want to access it. Well, I don't want to scrape LinkedIn myself because we're worried about terms of service on our own account. So I need to go through a third party, which is Apollo. I don't want to pay the full price for Apollo. I just need to essentially like have a little slice of that Apollo pie. And that's where Apify comes in. So Apify is a marketplace for web scrapers. You pay a certain amount a month, in this case, $40, and that essentially gives you $40 of credit to use on these different scrapers. For example, you'll see up here on the top, Apollo scraper, scrape up to 50,000 leads. You pay $1.20 for every 1,000 leads that this actor, they call it Apify actors, gives you. So $40 a month for Apify, $1.20 of that 40 goes to this actor every 1,000 leads it generates. So all that to say is that there's a lot of layers you have to go through to get someone's linked information due to just how LinkedIn works. And this is the way we do it. And it's not just because $40 is less than 60, it's because Apify gives us some flexibility, right? What if I don't need to use all $40 on Apollo? Well, there's tons of other web scrapers on Apify, things like Instagram scrapers, TikTok scrapers, etc., right? I can kind of just pick and choose. It's sort of a buffet and allows me to be flexible at a lower price point. You might be saying at this point, that's great, Chase, but I still don't understand why there's an Apollo URL generator. What do we care about the URL? Well, every time I change the filter here inside of Apollo, right? If I change the location, I add a location, change titles, the actual URL in your browser changes, right? So what we need to do is we need to generate an Apollo URL that corresponds to the leads you are trying to get and give that to Apify. Because when we look at our Apify scraper here, what it does is it requires us to give it the URL that we want it to scrape, right? So think of Apify as some guy who has an Apollo account and he's willing to give you the information that he gets from Apollo. He just has to know, well, what URL do you want me to search for? What information do you actually need? So the key piece becomes, hey, how do we generate this URL accurately every single time that corresponds to the leads we are trying to get? And so we can look at some of the different runs here, right? In this last one, it had 377 runs, which means we gave it a URL and it came back with 377 hits. And each hit was a person's name, LinkedIn, blah, 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 blah. All that information you saw in the Google Sheet, that's what it came back with. Now, if all that was super confusing, all you need to know is for us to scrape someone's LinkedIn, we're going to use Apify. And what Apify needs from us is an Apollo URL. And this generates the URL we need. So from there, we parse that data, right? This Apify data that you see here, over here on the right, and I'll move myself over a little bit. It's kind of messy. There's a lot going on, but we only want certain information that we care about, right? And that information is emails, names, all that good stuff. And so we have this parse lead data that allows us to do that. This is going to take all the messy stuff on the left and give us some nice information on the right that also includes a summary of all the key points. And once that happens, it will come to an if node. Now, why do we have an if node here? Well, even if we get, in this case, 377 items from the lead data, not all of it's going to be perfect. Sometimes it's going to error out, which is what this if node does, right? We have a JSON error. If it does not exist, it's just going to go to the false branch and we're going to ignore it. That way it doesn't clutter up our Google Sheets stuff. From there, it gets added to the Google Sheets. In this case, I have a limit, so this is running only 10 times because for the demo, I didn't find it necessary to do this 370 times. When you use this and download this in production, you can delete this limit. This limit does not have to exist. Feel free to get rid of it. Or if you don't want to have all 350 items or 400 items or 500 items that you get from your scraping, just change it here. That could be 50 items, 100 items, however you want to limit it. Do so here or get rid of it entirely. And once that happens, we've kind of completed the personal background, the LinkedIn scraping for our leads, right? We know about them and their personal stuff, but we want to know about them and their company, right? I'm not just selling to a person, especially if it's a founder. Like you need some information about what they do, what they've done, and what people think about them. And that's what happens down here in the company research and outreach portion in the green. So we get, and this is a loop because we're hitting a couple different things before we want to move to the next item. And so we're going to research their company because we got their email, we got all that stuff, and we're using Tavily to do it. And some of the things we want to know about are company overview, right? What do they do? What are they about? I want to then do some like recent news, like is there anything in the last basically 12 to 18 months that would be relevant? I want to know about their key offerings. I want to know about third-party sentiment. And then I want kind of a comprehensive summary that combines all that in 1 or 2 sentences. And that's what this does. And we use Tavily for that. From there, we then generate the outreach message, right? And this is where you make your money, right? Because we're taking all the personal data from LinkedIn. We're taking all that company data that we just researched. And now we're going to combine it with what you have to sell. What's your call to action? What do you bring to the table? What do you want that actual message to look like? And we'll go into this in a little more detail later, but right, the system message is where you make your money. This is where you put how you want it to sound. And this is just going to be purely the body, the actual title, the header, and also the footer is something you set up inside of Instantly. We then put all that into Google Sheets. And then lastly, we then send stuff to Instantly AI. Now, again, what's Instantly AI? Well, it's a cold outreach platform that allows you to do email at scale, right? It does all the warm up for you. You can add multiple accounts. It's like, again, your little command center for conducting these campaigns. And that wasn't really something we had before here, right? In this one, it was kind of like choose your own adventure or do it super small scale and just send it via Gmail. And that's not effective enough. And so then it just does that as many times as it needs to via the loop. And then at that point, you're kind of done. Once you've done that, you're then set to go into Instantly and then conduct your campaign. In this case, like I said, we had 10 leads, and all I'd have to do now is just hit the resume campaign button and it would fire those off. And you could take this even further, right? You could actually have it warm up the leads to start. Like Instantly is actually a pretty good platform. I'm not going to turn this into an Instantly lesson. The documentation is pretty good. There's tons of stuff out there, but understand you're basically 10 minutes of setup and one button away from being able to run this every single time and just like shoot off a large amount of emails. And so now how you understand how it works from a very high level, we're now going to go into each module one by one, and I'm going to kind of show you what you need to edit, what you need to change, and what to watch out for. So on the form submission, there isn't really anything you need to change right here that I think. Like I said, it's kind of small, right? Just company size, keywords, location, and the title. But understand you can put multiple keywords inside of this form when you submit it, which essentially add as like additional sections when it's actually looking for leads. Now, for the Instantly campaign ID, we'll dive a little more into Instantly, but just so you understand what it is, when I'm inside Instantly and I come on the left and I go to campaigns and I click on the campaign, up here up top in the URL, that's where you're going to find your campaign ID. So this highlighted section. Right after campaign backslash, it's then going to give you a series of numbers and letters up until the next backslash, and that's your ID. You're just going to copy that, and that's what you're going to put under campaign ID for the form submission. Now, if you think you'll never do different campaigns and they're always going to be the same thing, you could hard code it later, but just understand that's where you find it. So next, the Apollo URL generator. So we're passing in the user prompt all that information you fill out, right? Title, size, keywords, all that. And then inside the system prompts, we're saying, hey, this is how the URL should look, right? We give kind of the template, and then we give an example of someone who's looking for VPs of engineering in New York for a certain company size in healthcare AI. And then we just have the example at the bottom. And for all these chat models, these are all we're just using 4.1 mini, right? We're using 4.1 for the URL generator. So I did the most powerful one. Honestly, it's probably overkill, but the URL has to be right every single time. If your URL is wrong, it's simply just not going to run. But the rest of these, this is 4.1 mini, 4.1 mini, 4.1 mini. Then we go to Apify. And so it's going to be post. URL is going to be the run sync. Then I'll show you where you get that. And then you're just doing like accept application JSON. You're putting in your API key. Don't worry, I'll delete this afterwards. And then down here in the payload, right? True 500 URL. Now, where did I get this information? How do I do all this Apify stuff? I've never used Apify before. Let me show you. All right, so here I am inside of the Apify actor that we're using, this Apollo scraper. Now on the templates, I believe I actually have a link to it that you can see here. But if you simply go to Apify, it's going to open up with just a search menu, and you're just going to search for Apollo scraper. It's going to be the first one that pops up. The Apollo scraper, scrape up to 50,000 leads. Okay, so once you're inside Apollo, when it comes to figuring out what the JSON payload is, right, what this is, it's just going to be this. Right, you're just going to copy this, right? And you're going to paste it down here into the JSON body. Now, I will say when it comes to total records, which it may or may not show, it should default to 500, but 500 is the minimum that you have to put in there. And you can also delete stuff, right? If I don't want the personal emails, you could just like get rid of that. Or if I just want the work emails, you can do that as well. Just understand this is what should be in the JSON body. Get personal emails, get work emails, total records, and then we map the URL that was generated from the Apollo URL generator. Now, how did I know what the URL was supposed to be? Well, the way you find that, and this also goes for essentially all Apify actors, you're just going to come over here to the right, top right, you're going to do API endpoints, and you'll see here a bunch of different stuff that you can put as the URL. Now you have run actors synchronously, and then run actor and get dataset items. The one you want to use is run actor and get dataset items, because it means it's not just going to run on that one module. It's actually going to wait till it gets all the data to actually give you the thumbs up that it's ready. That way you don't have to like do any sort of webhook stuff or pause or do a timer. It just is going to, when it's done, it'll tell you. But the one thing you need to note is that when you copy this, you're not going to put it all in there. You're only going to copy it up to the question mark. So you'll see here it then says question mark token equals blah, 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 blah. Don't put that in there. It's essentially asking for your API key at that point. We put the API key down in the headers. So you'll just take that, copy it, and then put it into here. So it should end with run sync get dataset items. And it's going to run, and then it's going to push out as many items as it can find, right? We asked for 500. It came back with 377. And like we saw before, kind of gross in terms of how much stuff it pushes us. And we don't care about most of it, which is why we have the parse lead data. Now you'll see here up top on the prompt, what am I pushing? Well, I'm just pushing the stuff I care about, which in this case is names, titles, emails, organization stuff. Now, if you want to add more information, then you essentially would just edit this prompt and you'd say like new info. And let's say I wanted their photo URL. I would then drag that into there, and that's what it would parse out. But I just kind of left the things I felt was important. And then the system prompt is just saying, hey, take all this information and turn it into something that has separate items that I can use on the right. And we want it to be pushed into separate items because eventually we're going to be adding these to the Google Sheet. And it's easier if one item is name, one item is first name, right? Et cetera, et cetera. Which is why you have this structured output parser. So if you've never used one of these output parsers before, all you're doing is you're specifying what you want the output to look like. And so once it does that, we do the if node, like we said before. Is there any errors? If there is, get rid of them. If there's not, continue. We then add to a Google Sheet. In the Skool, I have a link to the Google Sheet template. So make sure you download that, and then make sure when you're using the template, you actually connect it properly, right? So we're just mapping the stuff, right? Like I said before, in that output parser, we have a specific output just so we can do this, right? So I can very easily drag and drop stuff in the right place. And so we're pushing all that personal information that we care about and all the company info that we care about, right? Websites, URLs, titles, all that good stuff. It then gets sent here to our Google Sheet where we have a one-stop shop to actually view all the data we're scraping. We then have the limit like I talked about before, which goes to the loop, which then goes to the company research. Now we're pushing 3 things to this module: the company website, and the company LinkedIn. And the system message, we're asking for, I believe, 5 things in return: company overview, company recent company news online, key offerings, third-party sentiment, and then a comprehensive summary of all that. So the rest of this just breaks down how I want the module to use its tools, specifically the Tavily tool, and like what sort of sources do I want it to focus on? What sort of secondary sources? How recent do I want it to be? All that is explained here. Again, all this is on the template, and feel free to edit this because all you really need to put here is what you want it to search for, why, and what you want the output to look like. Just like we saw before, we have a structured output parser again, which breaks out how I want the output to look like. So all 5 of those things, make them separate items. We then have our Tavily tool. Tavily tool is one of those new community nodes that's even on the cloud version. So if you haven't done it yet, you need to upgrade your n8n. You need to enable the community nodes. I've done a video on that before. And then you just have to search for Tavily over here on the right? You just search for Tavily, and it will pop up, and then you are able to just download it. But inside of here, you just need to connect your Tavily account. So to do that is pretty easy. I'm pretty sure all you need is an API key. And if you haven't used Tavily before, pretty awesome tool. Think of it as Google for large language models. You simply log in. You can do it with whatever, and it's free at the beginning. So every month you get 1,000 credits, which is actually pretty good because each lead, each company we look at is going to cost us 10 credits, but you could bring that down even more. And so just by signing up, you essentially get 100 free company like researches you can do, right? You can research 100 companies for free per email based on that free plan. And then to get the API key, you just come in here and you just copy it. You then connect to your account. We're going to do research search query. The query is going to be defined by the model. So it's just going to be smart about it. And then for the options, search depth, we're putting it advanced, max results 5, and with the time range to be a year. Now, if you want to be able to squeeze some more companies, like I said, we can do 100 companies for free. If you want to double that or do more, for search depth, you'll go to basic, and then for max results, do like 2 or 3, right? The search won't be as good, it won't be as deep, but it's going to be cheaper. And so with that, it gives us all the company research, and then we do our outreach message. And so what do we pass? We pass the name of our lead, their personal background summary, their company name, and their company background. And the system message is basically saying, hey, this is what I want the body of those emails to sound like. And this is where you really need to edit and customize it, right? So I have it to be 100 to 150 words. Could be more, could be less. I have tons of references here to Chase AI's consulting services. If you're not Chase AI, you may or may not be an AI consultancy, in which case you need to change all this, the company, the offering, and how you also want it to write. This talks about hooks. This talks about how I want it to do, what it needs to do, but like change this, customize this. You have your own writing style. You have your own way that you think will actually turn into people opening your emails and responding to them. And this is where you put it. So definitely put an example output an email you've done before or multiple, right? The more, the better. So after that, we push it to Google Sheets, and then we go to Instantly AI. So let's take a look at this node and what we're doing. So it's an HTTP node. If you are on the community version, so you're self-hosting, there is an Instantly AI custom node that you can use, right? So it'll be a little easier for you to set up. I'm going to show you how you do it on the n8n cloud version, because if you can do it on the cloud, it's super easy to translate to the self-host. In fact, it'll probably be way easier, but the HTTP node works no matter what. So the URL we're going to be doing is API instantly.ai/API/v2/leads. You're going to put in your API key here. Again, I'm going to delete mine after this video. And then we have the body. So here's what we're passing, right? Campaign, email, last name, first name, company name, and custom variables. So campaign, it needs to know because all these leads are going to be under a campaign umbrella, right? So you have to know the ID. And then we're just saying, here's the names, here's what the company is, and here's the actual body. Actually, pretty simple, nothing crazy going on there. But let's now hop into Instantly so you can kind of understand what's going on here. So Instantly, on the left side, there's a few things you're gonna have to set up. The first thing you're gonna need to set up is your actual email. You can add tons of different domains. And when you add a new email, it walks you through how to do it. You can actually buy pre-warmed accounts every few weeks. They show you how to do a Gmail, right? Microsoft, it actually takes you through step-by-step. It takes 3 minutes. They even have pretty good YouTube videos that show you how to set it up. But you need to set up the account. Next, you're gonna come on the left and you're gonna go to campaigns. And this is where you're gonna set up your new campaign. So you're just gonna do add new, and we'll just call this demo 2. And you'll see we now have a few things in here. We have leads and we have sequences. These are the two we care about. So the leads are gonna be auto-populated via our workflow. Like right, we saw before on the other demo, and it's gonna have their names, their emails, all that good stuff. Sequences are, again, sequences are email sequences. So step 1 is when I run this campaign, that's the first email that's going to get sent to them. I can add multiple steps, right? Based on, hey, they respond, they don't respond, how many days do I want it to wait? Again, this isn't a deep dive on Instantly, but that's how it works. And so here's what an example email would look like. You'll see here a lot of variables, and variables are those things with the 2 squiggly brackets. So it says hi blank custom body. Now, is it going to send custom body? No, what it's going to send is the custom body we put down here, right? So it passed this custom body variable, which is this entire write-up we had, to Instantly. So now it knows, hey, when I'm sending this email to this lead, I'm going to use that customized email. And so if I preview it, you can actually see the full write-up. Now, how did I know that was the variable to use? Well, if I go here, right, you'll notice I don't have a name. If I come down to the bottom where it says variables and I click on it, then can see all the variables that are available to me. If I want to do first name, I just click first name. And when I preview it, we now see hi Kelly. And so that's what it looks like from here in n8n, where we pass the variables, to here inside of Instantly, where you can actually use them to generate the custom outreach. And again, there's a ton you can do on here in terms of scheduling, in terms of setting up signatures and emails and making it look pretty. Again, I won't deep dive that here, but that's how the n8n to Instantly connection works. And again, for Instantly, in terms of cost, there is a 2-week free trial. You can send up to 30 emails with the free trial. You can do all the API stuff. But if you want to do this for like big time, it's going to cost you $37 a month. for 5,000 emails, which is pretty on par for cold outreach programs out there. Okay, so before we wrap this all up, let's quickly talk about the APIs you need and the costs for this whole thing. We've talked about it a little bit, but let's go through it thoroughly. So we need 4 API keys for this: Apify, OpenAI, Instantly, and Tavily. Tavily gone through, very easy to get. OpenAI, the documentation's pretty clear if you go through the n8n docs if you've never done it before. As for Apify, once you have an account and they have a free trial, but you can't use the API if you're on the free trial. So to do this, you will need the $39 a month version. You're just going to come to the bottom left and go to settings, go to APIs and integrations, and you can find and create your API tokens here. For Instantly, you're going to go to the bottom left, click on your profile, then do settings. You're going to go to integrations, API keys, and here's your API key. Now let's talk about costs. So touched on it before. Instantly, $38 a month, but they do have that free trial. Tavily, free for the first 100 leads, for the first 100 companies. And again, that's with the current search setup. Like I showed you before, we could double that pretty quickly just by changing some of the settings. And then after that, you're looking at about 8 cents a lead. You can get it down even more depending how you do it. You also have the option of just every 100 leads switching emails, right? You could kind of abuse the free trial system if you wanted to. Apify, $39. Apollo, $1.20 of that 39. And then for the actual GPT tokens, we're looking at per 100 leads under 10 cents. So pretty cheap in that regard. And like, it sounds like those things add up, but truth be told, to create essentially an entire cold outreach, customized cold outreach email campaign from scratch, not bad, right? I don't think it's too bad. So as always, let me know what you think of it. Let me know if you run into any issues. I really like this workflow. I think it's really lean, but very, very efficient, right? Especially when we compare it to what we had before, which was a bit of a behemoth, kind of unwieldy. I really like what we've gotten here. So good luck, and I'll see you guys around.